Hello and welcome to my kitchen. I'm Judith, and today I'm going to start on my sauerkraut. So I have a total of 15 pounds of cabbage. This is half of it. A very large bowl. Mandolin. We're going to use some sea salt to get the fluids out of the cabbages. And my favorite seasonings for my sauerkraut are juniper berries and caraway seeds. So let's get started. I'm going to shred up as much cabbage as I can fit into this bowl, and then I'm going to put it into my crock, and then we'll start over until the crock is full. Okay, we've got the 2 heads of cabbage all shredded. Now, even if you're using a mandolin, you may end up chopping a lot by hand, which I usually do, because the mandolin's going to give you chunks like this. And these are, far too thick to be incorporated into your sauerkraut. They aren't going to ferment at the same rate as the rest of it. So now that we have our lovely big bowl of shredded cabbage, we're going to sprinkle 3 tablespoons of coarse salt. And please make sure you're doing all this with clean hands, because we don't want to introduce any source of rot to our sauerkraut. And now we are going to mix it in and massage it until you can feel the liquid start to come out of the cabbage. Make sure you get right down to the bottom. Because we do want to squeeze the liquid out of the cabbage, so as it starts to feel moist, start giving it a good squeeze. Okay, and now that the salt's in there and all mixed in, I am going to add 2 tablespoons of juniper berries, approximately. A little more wouldn't hurt. There we go. And about 2 tablespoons of caraway seeds. And you can add more or less depending on yours or other seasonings that you prefer. We're just going to get those a mix in as well. We're going to take our lovely big crock, and we're going to start pushing our cabbage into it. And we want to squash it right down in there so it's nice and tight. So throw some in and push it down. And when you're chopping your cabbage, you want to make sure, before you cut it up, to reserve a couple of nice large leaves so that you can place on top. And you don't want to completely fill, you want at least 3/4 of an inch of headspace. You can get this pushed way down nice and tight. Now, I know I said I had 15 pounds of cabbage, so that's enough to do probably 2 of this size crock. So I am going to stop today at the 2 heads that we've chopped up already. Looks like I may have a little bit too much for this. And if you keep pushing it, you do get a lot more than you expected into your crock. You do want it nice and tight in there. get the whole bowl in. Okay, now that we've got our crock filled, and yeah, I don't think I'm going to squeeze any more in there. That was that whole bowl of cabbage. We're going to top it with some of the cabbage leaves that we reserved. I'm just going to split the rib so they fit better. And this will help the cabbage stay below the level of the liquid. So make sure your rim is clean. You don't have any caraway seeds, loose bits of cabbage hanging around. And then we're going to top it with our weight. And you got an extra little shove down there. And get our lid on. We need a little bit of water for the channel. And pop the top on. I think maybe a little more water. Now this you're going to want to put in a warmish place, not hot, but out of direct sunlight. And you are going to want to put it in a dish because as it starts to ferment, it is going to bubble and it will overflow. Check it in 24 hours and make sure it's starting to bubble. It may not bubble that quickly, and depending on how warm it is when you do it and what level of fermentation you like, as little as a week. Now, a handy thing to do when you've got it all ready to start to ferment is date the jar so that you know exactly when you put it there and you're not relying on your memory, because my memory is rather faulty. So this has a nice black rim that I can put a white marker on. So this is the 31st day? Yeah. 1, 8. So then I will know how long it's been sitting. So when I got up this morning and I checked my sauerkraut, there was no liquid in the jar. Now, same as when we made the kimchi, you put it in without extra liquid. It will produce its own. If it doesn't or doesn't produce enough to cover the cabbage, you can add some brine. So I did add 4 cups of a very mild brine. And I come back 8 hours, a little more than 8 hours later, and it is starting to ferment. It is bubbling beautifully, and that is what we want. So yes, if you don't get enough liquid to cover your cabbage, do put in a little bit of brine. Just enough to cover it, and realize that it is going to produce bubbles and more liquid, and it will overflow, so make sure you have it in a dish. It has been 10 days. We set this up on the 31st of August. It is now the 10th of September. We're going to check it. It has overflowed into the dish below, so that shows that it has been fermenting, and there you can still see bubbles in there. So I'm going to just pop the lid off. And again, same as the kimchi, anything you're going to put in the jar needs to be clean. So give it a sniff. Smells like cabbage. And we're just going to push it down, make sure everything's under the fluid. Looking good. I think we could do with just a tiny bit more. So, give me a second and I'll get some brine done. And I'm using well water because, same as the kimchi, the chlorine in tap water is going to inhibit the fermentation process. So that's enough. So that Didn't even take a half a cup. That took about 1/3 of a cup. So make sure you've got water in your channel. Pop your lid back on, and it can wait again. It can continue fermenting for another probably 6 weeks. I like mine well fermented. We'll be back to check it again in a couple of weeks. Well, this is week 7 of our sauerkraut. It is ready. So we're going to open it up, and I am going to be canning most of it, but I'm going to set some aside for use now. Let's just pop our lid off here. There we go. Okay. Get our weight out. And dispose of the leaves that I put on top. Let's just pull these off here. There we go. Now, sauerkraut, when it's ready, does have a vinegar smell and flavor. It's actually quite lovely. It's not as intense as vinegar. It's beautiful. So, and I just did not touch the fork. Don't worry about that. Let me get some containers to put our top bit in, and then we'll can the rest. So I have some friends that like to cook their cabbage rolls with sauerkraut in the pan. So that's what's going to happen to the initial bit. The rest of it I'm canning for long-term storage, because obviously it won't keep forever in the fridge. Well, it won't keep forever canned either, but it'll last a lot longer. Although it does lose some of its health benefits, because the heat of canning will destroy a lot of the good bacteria as well as the bad. Now, obviously this isn't the easiest thing to dig out of the jar because it was packed in there pretty tight. Okay, now we got that out. We're going to start canning, and I think if there's a lot left, that'll probably go into another bin in the fridge. And I'm going to switch to tongs to put it in the jars, just because it's getting a little deep in there for the fork. So there's our first 5 jars of the sauerkraut canned. It is such good sauerkraut this time. It will vary every time you make it. I did adjust my recipe a little bit from the first time I made it, as the first time I had way too much caraway in it. It was still good, but it was too much caraway. This one is delicious. So thank you for watching, and I thank everyone that's already subscribed. If you loved the video, please give it a like. If you love sauerkraut, enjoy. This one's really good. Thank you for watching.